All right, let's dive into business analysis and software modeling today. We're going to unpack a business analyst training course,
Oh, cool.
and might surprise you how relevant this stuff is,
Yeah,
even if you've never written code.
right.
Ever wonder what happens like before someone starts coding an app or website?
Hmm.
There's a whole visual language for that. It's like blueprints for complex systems,
Yeah,
and it's called UML.
that's right. We think of software as all like ones and zeros.
Yeah,
But before any of that, someone has to figure out what the software needs to do,
right.
who's going to use it, how it all fits together.
Yeah.
That's where a business analyst and this visual language, UML, comes in.
Okay, so this training course,
Hmm.
this is for someone like becoming a certified business analyst.
Right.
What does that role even mean?
So a business analyst is like a bridge
Okay.
between what a business needs
Yeah.
and the tech solutions that can address those needs.
Uh-huh.
They analyze a company's processes,
Okay.
pinpoint problems
Yeah.
or areas for improvement, and then determine how software or technology can be used to make things better.
So they're kind of like detectives for businesses.
Yeah.
They uncover clues, piece together the puzzle, then they come up with a plan.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
And this training course is all about giving aspiring business analysts the tools
Okay.
and techniques they need to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
One of those tools is visuals to represent complex systems, and that's where UML comes in.
Okay, and speaking of visuals,
Yeah.
this PDF starts with something pretty familiar.
Okay.
Flowcharts, they
Yeah.
use a simple example of a physician evaluation,
Right.
documenting that whole process
Yeah.
using a flowchart.
Flowcharts are great because they visually represent a sequence of steps.
Right.
This helps us grasp the big picture,
Mm-hmm.
break down complex processes into smaller chunks,
Mm-hmm.
and even spot potential issues
Okay.
or inefficiencies.
So it's like a visual recipe
Right.
for a process.
Exactly.
You can see each step, any decisions you got to make along the way,
Yeah.
the possible outcomes.
Hmm.
But how does that relate to software?
Right.
I mean, we're not baking a cake.
You're right. But that's the beauty of it.
Okay.
You can apply these visual tools
Mm-hmm.
to almost any process,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's evaluating a patient, building software,
Okay.
or planning a vacation.
Mm-hmm.
The principles are the same.
Right.
You're defining a series of steps and their relationships.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So we've got our flowcharts down. Now the PDF dives into the main event, L.
Right.
It describes ML as a standardized way to model software systems.
Yeah.
Why is this so important? Why not just like use plain language
Okay.
or bullet points
Yeah.
to explain how software should work?
ML provides a much more precise
Okay.
and comprehensive way to represent a system
Mm-hmm.
that's a visual language
Right.
that everyone involved in a project can understand.
Okay.
Developers, designers, project managers, clients.
Got it.
This makes sure everyone's on the same page.
Yeah,
Literally,
literally.
which is vital for successful collaboration.
So it's like having a universal blueprint
Yeah,
that eliminates any like ambiguity,
Right.
misinterpretations.
exactly.
And that seems especially crucial when you're dealing with complex software.
Absolutely.
But what makes UML so effective in conveying these complex ideas?
One of the key advantages
Yeah?
is that it lets you model a system from different perspectives.
Okay.
It's not just one big diagram.
Right.
It's a collection of different diagram types,
Okay.
each highlighting a specific aspect of the system.
The PDF mentions a few different types of UML diagrams. Use case diagrams, sequence diagrams, state diagrams.
Right.
So how do these different diagrams work together to give us a complete picture?
So each diagram type focuses on a different aspect.
Okay.
Think of it like looking at a building
Mm-hmm.
from different angles.
Okay.
You might have a floor plan that shows you the rooms.
Yeah.
A side view that shows you the elevation,
Uh-huh.
and a cross-section that shows the structure.
Right.
Each view gives you unique information,
Okay.
and together they give you a complete understanding of the building.
I'm starting to get the idea. It's
Yeah.
like UNL diagrams give us different perspectives on a software system.
Exactly.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Now I'm really curious to learn more about these different diagram types,
Right.
how they're used in practice.
Okay.
But before we jump into that, the CDF throws us into the deep end
Yeah.
with a real-world example.
Okay.
Managing the purchase of raw materials for a manufacturing company.
Right.
They want us to model this process using UML diagrams.
This is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
This scenario is perfect for showcasing how UNL can be used to analyze a real-world business problem.
Mm-hmm.
It involves different actors,
Okay.
the material buyer, the administrator, and the supplier,
Got it.
all interacting to manage this purchasing process.
Yeah.
And it's a process that many businesses can relate to, even if they're not in manufacturing.
So we're not just talking about abstract concepts here.
Right.
We're actually tackling a problem that companies face every day.
That's right.
I'm intrigued. Tell me more about this raw materials scenario
Okay.
and how we can start modeling it using UML.
The PDF starts with a use case diagram,
Okay.
which is a great way to get a high-level understanding of what the system does. A use case diagram focuses on the who and the what,
Okay.
who are the actors,
Yeah.
and what actions can they perform.
So in our raw materials example,
Yeah.
we would identify actors like the material buyer, the administrator, the supplier,
Right?
then figure out the specific actions like placing an order, approving an order, delivering materials.
Exactly. It's like mapping out the different ways someone could use a vending machine.
Okay.
You have your customer actor
Right.
who can select a product, pay for it,
Yeah.
receive the item.
And the use case diagram helps us understand like the system's purpose from the user's perspective.
Exactly.
Okay, that's a great way to put it. And just like with the vending machine example,
Yeah.
by mapping out the use cases, we can start to identify like potential issues
Right.
or missing features.
Right. Yeah.
For example, what happens if the vending machine's out of your favorite snack
Right.
or your payment method doesn't work?
Exactly. The use case diagram helps us think through all the possibilities,
Yeah.
make sure the system is robust, user-friendly.
And that's just one type of UML diagram.
That's right.
Okay, I'm really starting to see how powerful this can be.
Yeah.
Even for someone who's not a programmer,
Mm-hmm.
just understanding how to create a use case diagram
Right.
could be incredibly helpful in analyzing processes and identifying like bottlenecks,
Absolutely.
areas for improvement.
And the PDF provides step-by-step instructions
Okay.
on how to create a use case diagram, identifying the actors, the use cases,
Yeah.
and the relationships between them.
Okay.
It's surprisingly straightforward.
This is exciting stuff. I can already see myself using these diagrams to map out processes in my own work.
Awesome.
But before I get too carried away, let's move on to those other intriguing diagram types.
Okay.
Sequence and state diagrams.
All right.
I'm guessing those bring even more depth and detail to our model.
You're right on the money. Think of it like zooming in on specific aspects of the system.
Okay.
After we've established the big picture
Right.
with the use case diagram.
Got it.
Sequence diagrams, as the name suggests,
Yeah.
show the sequence of events that occur within a specific use case.
Okay.
It's like watching a well-choreographed dance.
Okay.
But instead of dancers, we have objects in our system sending messages back and forth.
Okay, that's an interesting analogy.
Yeah.
So if our use case is material buyer places an order,
Right.
the sequence diagram would break down all the steps involved.
Exactly.
The material buyer sending a request, the system checking inventory, the supplier receiving the order, and so on.
Exactly. And the order of these messages is crucial.
Okay.
It's like a chain reaction.
Right.
Where each action triggers the next.
Uh-huh.
By visualizing the sequence, we can pinpoint potential bottlenecks
Okay.
or areas where the process could be streamlined.
And I'm guessing this level of detail is where things can get really insightful.
Absolutely. Imagine seeing that there are multiple back and forth messages
Okay.
between the material buyer and the supplier
Yeah.
to finalize the order details.
Right.
That could be a sign that some of those steps could be automated or simplified
Okay.
to reduce manual effort and potential delays.
It's like watching a dance routine
Yeah.
and realizing there's a section where the dancers are taking unnecessary steps or
Right.
bumping into each other.
Exactly.
By streamlining the choreography, we can make the whole performance more efficient.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
And just like with a dance, a well-designed sequence diagram
Okay.
should flow smoothly with clear communication
Got it.
and no unnecessary steps.
Okay, so sequence diagrams help us break down the flow of interactions within a specific use case. But what about state diagrams?
Okay.
I remember you mentioned that they focus on the journey of a single object
Yeah.
through its various states.
You're right.
So if we think about an order object in our raw materials scenario,
Okay.
what are some of the states it might go through?
Well, it might start in a pending state,
Okay,
waiting for approval from the administrator.
right.
Once approved, it could transition to processing,
Okay,
where the system is gathering information
right.
and preparing the order.
And then it could move to shipped
Yes.
once the supplier has sent out the materials
Right.
and finally delivered when the materials get to the company.
Exactly. The state diagram visually represents these states
Okay,
as boxes connected by arrows
okay.
that represent the events or triggers
Uh-huh.
that cause the state changes.
So for example, the approve order event
Right.
triggered by the administrator
Yep.
would cause the order object to go from pending to processing.
That's precisely how it works.
Okay,
And what's fascinating
yeah,
is you can add more detail to the state diagram,
okay.
like specific conditions
Mm-hmm.
that must be met for a transition to occur. For
Right.
instance, maybe the order can only transition to shipped
Right.
if the payment has been
I'm
processed.
starting to see how state diagrams can be incredibly useful for understanding the complexities of a system,
Yes.
especially when you have objects that go through multiple stages
Right.
and depend on various conditions to move forward.
You're getting it.
Okay.
And in our raw materials example, the state diagram could even help us identify potential issues
Mm-hmm.
in the order fulfillment process. For
Okay.
instance, what happens if an order gets stuck in pending?
Yeah.
Is there a way to automatically escalate it
Yeah.
or notify someone?
This is reminding me of those online order tracking systems
Oh,
where you
yeah.
see the status of your package
Yeah.
as it moves through different stages. It's incredibly helpful to have that visibility
Right.
and know what to expect.
That's a great comparison.
Yeah.
And that's one of the real-world benefits
Uh-huh.
of state diagrams. They can help us design systems that
Yeah.
provide that transparency
Right.
and keep users informed.
Okay, we've covered use case diagrams, sequence diagrams, and state diagrams.
Mm-hmm.
I'm feeling pretty empowered right now.
Good.
But I also have to admit,
Yeah.
there's still a part of me that wonders, will I actually use these UML diagrams?
That's a fair question.
Yeah.
And while you might not always create formal UML diagrams,
Okay.
the thinking behind them
Mm-hmm.
is incredibly valuable.
How so?
Well, NL is all about breaking down complexity,
Okay.
clarifying communication,
Right.
and visualizing processes.
Yeah.
These are skills that are relevant in any field,
Mm-hmm.
whether you're designing software, managing a project,
Right.
or even just trying to organize your own life.
You're right. It's like learning a new language.
Yeah.
Even if you don't become fluent,
Mm-hmm.
understanding the basic grammar and vocabulary
Right.
can still help you communicate more effectively.
Exactly.
And in this case, the language of UML can help us analyze and improve
Yeah,
just about any process.
that's right.
So even if I never become a certified business analyst,
Mm-hmm.
learning about UML can still make me a better thinker,
Absolutely.
problem solver.
It's about equipping yourself with a new set of mental tools
Okay.
that can help you analyze, communicate,
Yeah.
and innovate more effectively.
Okay, I'm officially a UML convert.
Awesome.
But before we get too carried away
Yeah.
with our newfound diagramming superpowers,
Right.
I think we need to address the elephant in the room, the software itself.
Ah, yes, the code.
Yeah.
We've been talking a lot about diagrams
Right.
and models,
Hmm.
but at some point, this all has to translate
Yeah.
into actual working software.
Right, exactly. So how does UML actually connect to programming and code?
Right.
Does someone have to manually translate all those diagrams
Yeah.
into lines of code?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's where things get even more fascinating.
Why?
In many cases, you can use UML diagrams to generate code automatically.
Wow.
There are special tools that can take a well-structured UML model
Okay.
and generate the basic framework.
So the diagrams aren't just for planning and communication.
Right.
They can actually be used to jumpstart development.
You got it. And even if the code isn't generated automatically,
Okay.
UML diagrams serve as a blueprint
Mm-hmm.
that guides the developers,
Right. Yeah.
ensuring that everyone is on the same page,
Right.
building the software according to the agreed-upon design.
Okay.
Think of it like an architect's blueprint for a house.
Right.
It provides a visual representation of the structure,
Yeah.
the layout,
Uh-huh.
allowing the builders to construct the house according to the architect's vision.
It's like having a shared roadmap
Exactly.
that prevents everyone from wandering off
Yeah.
and building something completely different.
That's right.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So ML is valuable not just for business analysts and designers, but also the programmers
Absolutely.
who actually bring the software to life.
Yeah.
It's like a bridge between the world of ideas and the world of implementation.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
ML helps bridge that gap between the conceptual design
Mm-hmm.
and the concrete implementation.
This is really making me appreciate the elegance of this whole process.
It is.
It's like a symphony
Yeah.
with different instruments playing their parts to create a beautiful piece of music.
Right.
And in this case, the different UML diagrams
Yeah.
are like the musical score.
That's a beautiful analogy.
Yeah.
A well-designed software system is indeed a testament to the power of collaboration, planning,
Right.
and clear communication.
And UML provides the framework
Yeah.
and the tools to achieve that harmony.
Well said.
Now, I know we've covered a lot of ground,
We have?
but there's one more piece of the puzzle we need to explore.
Okay.
Visio.
Right. The tool that the PDF recommends.
Mm-hmm.
It's time to get hands-on and see how Visio can empower us to become visual modeling masters. Ready to dive in?
Absolutely. Let's head to part 2 and see what Visio is all about.
Sounds good.
Welcome back to our deep dive into UML and business analysis.
We've laid the groundwork exploring what business analysis is
Yeah.
and introducing the concept of UML as this visual language
Right.
for software modeling.
And we left off with a real-world challenge, how to manage the purchase of raw materials
Right.
for a manufacturing company using UML diagrams.
We even started mapping out the big picture
Yeah,
with a use case diagram.
Right.
Identifying the key players, the material buyer, the administrator, and the supplier,
right.
and their interactions with the system.
And we saw how those use cases,
Yeah.
like place an order or approve an order,
Right.
help us understand the system's functionality from a user's perspective.
Exactly.
Now let's roll up our sleeves and dive deeper into those other intriguing diagram types.
Okay.
Sequence and state diagrams.
All right.
So the PDF wants us to create a sequence diagram for that material buyer places an order use case.
Okay.
To be honest, the name sequence diagram sounds pretty self-explanatory.
It is.
But where do we even begin?
You're right. The name is quite fitting.
Okay.
A sequence diagram is all about visualizing the step-by-step flow
Okay.
of messages between different parts of the system.
Messages. So is this like email or instant messaging within the software?
That's a good way to think about it.
Okay.
But in this context, messages represent any kind of communication
Right.
or interaction between different elements.
Okay.
Think of it like a relay race,
Okay.
where each runner,
Mm-hmm.
or in our case, each part of the system,
Right.
passes a baton, a message to the next runner
Got it.
to keep the process moving forward.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
So it's not just about the people involved, but also the different components of the software?
Exactly. And these components could be anything from a user interface
Right.
to a database
Uh-huh.
to a third-party service.
Okay.
The sequence diagram helps us map out how all these pieces work together
Right.
to achieve a specific goal, like placing an order.
So for our material buyer places an order scenario,
Right.
our sequence diagram would start with the material buyer,
Yeah,
represented as an object in our diagram,
right.
sending a place order message to the system.
Right. And then the system might check its inventory database
Okay.
to see if the materials are available.
Yeah.
This would involve sending a check inventory message to the database object.
And depending on the inventory status,
Mhm.
the system might send a message to the supplier
Yeah,
to confirm availability and get a quote.
exactly. You're getting the hang of this.
I'm trying.
The sequence diagram captures all of these interactions
Okay.
in chronological order,
Mm-hmm.
showing which object sends which message and to whom.
Right.
It's like creating a detailed timeline of
Okay.
the entire process.
And I'm guessing this level of detail is where things can get really insightful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Imagine seeing that there are multiple back and forth messages
Okay.
between the material buyer and the supplier
Yeah.
to finalize the order details.
Right.
That could be a sign that some of those steps
Mhm.
could be automated
Right.
or simplified to reduce manual effort
Yeah.
and potential delays.
It's like watching a dance routine.
Right.
And realizing there's a section where the dancers are taking unnecessary steps.
Exactly.
Or bumping into each other.
Yeah.
By streamlining the choreography, we
Mhm.
can make the whole performance more efficient.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
And just like with a dance, a well-designed sequence diagram
Okay.
should flow smoothly with clear communication
Right.
and no unnecessary steps.
Oh, sequence diagrams help us break down the flow of interactions
Right.
within a use case.
Yes.
But what about state diagrams?
Okay.
You mentioned that they focus on the journey of a single object
Yes, they do.
through its various states.
While sequence diagrams highlight the interactions between different objects.
Okay.
State diagrams zoom in on one object at a time
Right.
and map out its life cycle.
So if we think about an order object in our raw materials scenario,
Okay.
what are some of the states it might go through?
Well, it might start in a pending state,
Okay.
waiting for approval from the administrator.
Right.
Once approved, it could transition to processing,
Okay.
where the system is gathering information
Mm-hmm.
and preparing the order.
Okay.
Then it could move to shipped once the materials have been sent
Right.
and finally delivered.
When it arrives.
Exactly. The state diagram visually represents these states
Okay.
as boxes
Yeah.
connected by arrows
Yeah.
that represent the events
Right.
or triggers
Right.
that cause those state changes.
So for example, the approve order event
Yes.
triggered by the administrator
Right.
would cause the order object to go from that pending state
Right.
to the processing state.
That's precisely how it works. And what's fascinating
Yeah.
is you can even add more detail to the state diagram,
Okay.
like specific conditions that must be met for a transition to occur.
Right.
For instance, maybe the order can only transition to shipped
Yeah.
if the payment has been successfully processed.
I'm starting to see how the state diagrams can be incredibly useful
Yeah,
for understanding the complexities of a system,
they are.
especially when you have objects that go through multiple stages
Right.
and depend on various conditions to move forward.
You're getting it.
Okay.
And in our raw materials example,
Yeah.
The state diagram could even help us identify potential issues
Okay.
in the order fulfillment process.
Right.
For instance, what happens if an order gets stuck in pending?
Right.
Is there a way to automatically escalate it or notify someone to take action?
This is reminding me of those online order tracking systems
Oh, yeah,
where you can see the status of your package.
exactly.
It's incredibly helpful to have that visibility
Right.
and know what to expect.
That's a great comparison.
Yeah.
And that's one of the real-world benefits
Okay.
of using state diagrams.
Yeah.
They can help us design systems that provide that transparency
Right.
and keep users informed about the progress.
Okay, we've covered use case diagrams, sequence diagrams, and state diagrams.
Yeah.
I'm feeling pretty empowered right now.
Good.
But I also have to admit, there's still a part of me that wonders,
Yeah.
will I actually use these UML diagrams in my day-to-day life?
That's a fair question.
Yeah,
And while you might not always create formal UML diagrams,
right.
the thinking behind them
Mm-hmm.
is incredibly valuable.
How so?
Well, LL is all about breaking down complexity,
Okay.
clarifying communication,
Right.
visualizing processes.
Yeah.
These are skills that are relevant in any field,
Mm-hmm.
whether you're designing software,
Right.
managing a project, or even just trying to organize your own life.
You're right. It's like learning a new language.
Exactly.
Even if you don't become fluent,
Right.
understanding the basic grammar
Mm-hmm.
and vocabulary can still help you communicate better.
Absolutely.
And in this case, the language of UML
Right.
can help us analyze and improve just about any process we encounter.
That's right.
So even if I never become a certified business analyst,
Yeah.
learning about UML can still make me a better thinker and problem solver.
Absolutely. It's about equipping yourself with new mental tools
Okay.
that can help you analyze, communicate, and innovate.
Okay, I'm officially a UML convert.
Awesome.
But before we get too carried away with our newfound diagramming superpowers,
Right.
I think we need to address the elephant in the room, the software itself.
Yes, the code. We've been talking a lot about diagrams and models,
Yeah,
but at some point, this all has to translate into actual working software, right?
exactly. So how does UML actually connect to programming and code?
Right.
Does someone have to manually translate all those diagrams into lines of code?
That's a great question.
Yeah,
And that's where things get even more fascinating.
okay.
In many cases, you can use UML diagrams to generate code automatically.
Whoa.
There are special tools that can take a well-structured UML model
Okay.
and generate the basic framework of a software program.
So the diagrams aren't just for planning and communication.
Right.
They can actually be used to jumpstart development.
You got it. And even if the code isn't generated automatically,
Okay.
UML diagrams serve as a blueprint that guides the developers,
Right.
ensuring that everyone is on the same page,
Yeah.
building the software according to the agreed-upon design.
Okay.
Think of it like an architect's blueprint for a house.
Right.
It provides a visual representation
Hmm.
of the structure and the layout,
Yeah.
allowing the builders to construct the house
Right.
according to the architect's vision.
It's like having a shared roadmap that
Exactly.
prevents everyone from wandering off
Yeah,
and building something completely different from what was intended.
that's right.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
So Anel is valuable not just for business analysts and designers,
Right.
but also for the programmers who actually bring the software to life.
Absolutely.
It's like a bridge between the world of ideas
Yeah.
and the world of implementation.
That's a great way to put it. Amel helps bridge that gap
Yeah.
between the conceptual design and the concrete implementation.
This is really making me appreciate the elegance of this whole process.
It is.
It's like a symphony
Yeah.
with different instruments playing their parts harmoniously
Mhm.
to create a beautiful piece of music.
Right.
And in this case, the different UML diagrams are like the musical score.
That's a beautiful analogy.
Yeah.
A well-designed software system is indeed a testament to the power of collaboration,
Right.
planning, and clear communication.
And UML provides that framework
Yeah.
and the tools to achieve that harmony.
Well said. Now, I know we've covered a lot of ground already,
We have,
but there's one more piece of the puzzle we need to explore: Visio.
right, the tool that the PDF recommends for creating these diagrams.
Yes, it's time to get hands-on
Okay,
and see how Visio can empower us to become visual modeling masters.
ready to dive in.
Absolutely. Let's head to part 3 and see what Visio is all about. Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into the world of UML and business analysis.
We've explored the power of UML.
Right.
And how its different diagram types
Yeah.
can help us analyze and improve complex systems from software development
Right.
to everyday processes.
And now it's time to bring those diagrams to life.
Yes.
Using a tool called Microsoft Visio.
Oh, that's right.
I've heard of Visio.
Okay. But to be honest, I always thought it was just for like creating those fancy organizational charts.
Right.
How does it connect to UML and software modeling?
You're right, Visio is great for org charts,
Okay.
but it's so much more. I think of it as a digital drawing board
Okay.
with a toolbox full of
Yeah.
pre-manned shapes, connectors, and templates.
Okay.
And the best part is it has stencils specifically for UML,
Oh,
with all the
cool.
standard symbols and elements you need.
So instead of like painstakingly drawing everything from scratch,
Right,
we can just drag and drop these shapes
Yeah.
onto our canvas and connect them to
exactly.
represent like relationships between objects,
Right.
actors, or states.
It's like building with Legos.
Okay.
You have all the pieces you need,
Yeah.
and you can assemble them
Right.
in countless ways to create your model.
And Visio takes care of all the
Yeah.
visual aspects like formatting, alignment.
Making sure it looks professional,
Yeah.
you can focus on the content,
Right.
and Visio handles the aesthetics.
This is starting to sound a lot less intimidating.
It's good.
It's more like a creative process
Right.
where we can experiment with different ways
Exactly.
to represent our ideas.
But I'm curious about the actual process
Yeah,
of creating a UML diagram in Visio.
right.
Can you walk us through a simple example?
Okay.
Like that use case diagram for ordering food online.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, so let's say we're modeling that food delivery app.
Okay.
Remember, the first step in a use case diagram
Mm-hmm.
is identifying the actors.
Right.
In this case, we have the customer
Yeah.
on the restaurant.
Okay, and then we'd need to figure out all the key actions.
Yes.
Like browsing the menu, placing the order, making a payment.
Right.
Would each of those be a separate use case?
You got it.
Okay.
In Visio, you would start by dragging the actor shape
Mm-hmm.
from the UNL stencil onto your canvas
Okay.
and label it customer.
Right.
Then do the same for the restaurant.
Okay.
And for each action, use the use case shape,
Right.
label them accordingly, browse menu, place order, and so on.
Yeah.
Then connect the actors to the use cases with arrows
Okay.
to show who initiates each action.
And Visio makes it super easy to create those connections.
It does.
Making sure everything is like neatly aligned,
Yeah.
visually appealing.
That's right.
I can definitely see how using a tool like Visio would save so much time
Yeah.
compared to drawing by hand.
It does.
But what if our system gets like
Yeah.
more complex?
Okay.
What if we want to add a delivery driver actor?
Right.
Or additional use cases like
Right.
track order or rate restaurant?
As your diagram gets more complex,
Yeah. Okay.
Visio keeps everything organized,
Yeah.
readable.
Okay.
You can group related elements,
Right.
adjust the layout, and even zoom in and out
That makes sense.
to focus on specific areas.
Okay.
It's like a dynamic blueprint
Yeah.
that you can manipulate and refine.
This is making me want to fire up Visio and start creating diagrams right now.
Awesome.
It sounds like such a powerful tool, not just for software modeling, but for visualizing any kind of process or system.
You're right.
Yeah.
The principles of UML and visual modeling can be applied to so many domains.
Okay.
Whether you're mapping out a marketing campaign,
Right.
streamlining a manufacturing process,
Yeah.
or even planning a family vacation,
That's true.
these diagrams can help you bring clarity and structure.
Okay, I'm officially inspired.
Great.
I'm already brainstorming all sorts of processes
Awesome.
in my work and life
Yeah.
that I could visualize using UNL and Visio.
I love it.
But before we wrap up, I want to touch on one more thing.
Okay.
We've talked about different UML diagram types,
Yeah.
how to create them in Visio, but what about the actual interpretation of these diagrams?
Right.
Is there a right or wrong way to read them?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
While there are standard conventions for UML,
Okay.
the real power is using them as thinking tools
Mm-hmm.
to gain deeper insights
Right.
into the system you're modeling.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to experiment with different layouts, perspectives, levels of detail.
Okay.
The goal is to use these diagrams
Yeah.
to uncover issues, identify opportunities for improvement,
Right.
and communicate your ideas.
It's not about creating a perfect diagram.
Right.
It's about using these tools
Yeah.
to unlock a deeper understanding of
Exactly.
the systems we encounter.
And that's what makes this field so fascinating.
Yeah.
It's a blend of creativity, logic, and problem solving.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have.
From the fundamentals of UML
Yeah.
to using Visio.
And for anyone listening who wants to explore further,
Yeah.
there are tons of resources online,
Okay.
tutorials, templates,
Mm-hmm.
even free Visio alternatives.
So don't be afraid to dive in and start experimenting with these powerful tools.
That's right.
You might be surprised at the insights you discover
Yeah.
and the solutions you create.
Absolutely.
That's all for today's deep dive.
Thanks for joining us.
Until next time.